Hey everyone, welcome back to GameMaker Cast. It's Mickey again, and in this tutorial I wanted to show a couple different methods that would allow our player to switch between rooms. If we take a look at the current open project, we have 3 different sprites, and all of these sprites are 64 by 64, nothing special there. And then we have 3 different objects. We have an object player that consists of a create event, and all we're doing here is storing some keys. And then in the step event, we're using those keys in the keyboard check to move the character either left or right, or up and down. If we switch over to the object exit, we do not have anything in there, and we do not have anything in our wall. These are just placeholders for now. If we look at our room 1, you can see the layout here. So we have some walls, and we have an exit. The room number 2 is the same thing, just with 2 different exits. And finally, room number 3 has 1 exit here at the top. Now, what I want to do is in room number 1, I want to start by adding our player. I'm going to add our player down here. On the exits layer, I'm going to grab the object exit, come to the top, and I'm just going to fill it in here. Now, in room number 2, I'm going to also add a player at the top, and I will add an exit right here. And I'm going to add an exit down here at the bottom. And once more in room number 3, we'll do the same thing. Let's add the player at the top left. And we'll add the exit down here. Now what I want to be able to happen is when the player hits one of these exits, they're going to go to a certain room. And this is a room that we are going to define. So let's open up our object exit. And the first thing I want to do is go to variable definitions. And I want to add a new variable. The variable that I want to add is target underscore room. The default will be 0, and the type I'm going to add as a resource. Now I don't want to be able to select all the resources in here, so I'm going to click on the gear, and we're going to say only allow rooms. So now if we click here, you can see that only rooms are allowed. Just make sure that none is used by default, and that will change it to no one. The next thing I want to do is say if a player collides with me, I'm going to send the player to a different room. So we'll come down, add an event for collision and object player. In here, we need to make sure that we have defined the target room. So we could say if target underscore room not equal no one. Otherwise, if our target room is no one, we'll say show message. We'll say target underscore room is not defined. Now, if our target room is defined, we could say room underscore go to target room. All right, pretty simple. Let's close our object and open up room number 1. And if we double click on our exit here at the top and we click on variables, you can see that now we have a target room. We can click on the edit, use the drop down and select room number 2. It's that simple. Let's go to room 2 here at the top. I'm going to double click. We'll go to variables and let's set this to room number 1. And down here at the bottom, we'll double click and we'll variables again and set this to room number 3. And finally, in room 3, we'll double click on our exit, go variables, and let's set this to room number 1. Okay, let's hit play on our game and see how everything is working. All right, so let's go all the way over here. And we'll come up, and when we touch our player exit, we should be switched to room number 2. And you can see that we are now in room number 2. Let's go back to room number 1. And now let's go to room number 2, and we'll try room number 3. Perfect. So we can also go back to room number 1. Now, you will notice that I used a player object in each of these rooms. But sometimes the player object needs to be persistent. And that could be because our player could have health, and if we're not using global variables, we could just have the health on the player, and it could exist on each of these rooms. So if we were to come here and say that this player is going to be persistent, and actually in the create event, let's say I'm just going to add HP of 100, and anytime that we hit an exit, I'm going to say HP minus equals 10. And then finally in the draw GUI event, we'll say draw text X position, Y position, and then draw the HP. Okay, let's hit play. And you can see that I have 100 HP, but if I come up here and I hit this, well, right now I have two different, and actually that's because we used persistent right now. Now, if we didn't use persistent, if I came up, the HP would be taken away, but on the next screen, we're going to be back at 100. However, if I use persistent, the HP is going to be taken away 10 at a time, but you can see that in room number 2, we had two different players. So to do this, we can just go ahead and delete these players out of room 2 and also out of room 3. Now let's hit play. Let's make sure that our HP is being deducted when we exit. So we have 100, we come up, now we have 90, and so on, and 80, and finally should have 60 here at the end, which we do. Perfect. Now notice that when we go back to room number 1, the player does not come back because this is actually the initial object, so we don't have to worry about that. Now, what if we're coming over here and you can see that when we go over, we're in the wall. What if we wanted to say, if we come up here and we go to this room, now we're going to be down here. Well, we could do that by adding a few more variables onto our object exit. Underneath variable definitions, we'll add two more. We'll say position X and position Y. We'll both leave them as 0 and they can be a real. Now, all we have to do is once we send the player to the target room, we need to tell the player where the X and Y position is going to go. In GameMaker, we can use the keyword other to get the object that we're colliding with. Because we are the object exit, we're colliding with the player. That means that we could say other.x, and that is referring to the object player that hit this exit. So we could say other x equals position x, and other.y equals position y. Now the only thing left to do here is in each of these rooms, now underneath the variables for the exit, we have an x position and y position. So in room number 2, we want to make sure that, let's say, we're going to spawn the player down here. So that means that we need an x position of 912 and a y position of 656. So in room number 1, the x position was 912 and the y position was 656. Okay, now in the second room, if we go to room number 1 and we click on variables, well, we also have to change these variables. So let's just have, let's go back to room number 1 and let's use the position of the player down here, 136 and 632. 136 and 632. We also need to do the same for the bottom here. So this is going to go to room number 3, and let's start him off over here. So we'll just drag him in for a placeholder, 120 and 112. So back to room 2, and we have x as 120 and y as 112. Okay, so we have this done. We come back and we have this done. The only one that I think I'm missing is in room 3, and this is going to room number 1. So in room number 1, let's have him start right here, 136 and 632. 136 and 632. All right, let's make sure I've removed all my placeholder characters, and I have, so I'm going to hit play. And once we go over to the exit, we're going to be deducted 10 HP and we'll be moved to the correct location. So room 2 is down here, so room 3 will be up top. And this takes us back to room 1, which is down here at the bottom. Perfect. Now we'll try the very last one, which will be room 1, and it's down here. Nice. So that gives us a very flexible system where we can control where a player is going to go. And we also can control what room we're going to send our player to. I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next video.